History is often told backward. We start with the crowns, the victories, the grand monuments, and then we work our way back, asking how all that power was earned. But power is never born in palaces. It doesn't begin on a throne. It begins in obscurity, in anonymity, in silence. Before David became a king, before Israel knew lasting peace, before Jerusalem became a city of destiny, there was a boy. A boy no one considered important. He had no rank, no inheritance, and no future anyone bothered to imagine. This isn't a story about overnight success. It's a story about delay, about endurance. It's a story about power that was shaped slowly, painfully, and deliberately. This is the story of the slave who became a king. For centuries, the nation of Israel had lived without a king. They weren't ruled by dynasties or bloodlines. Instead, their leaders were judges, men and women raised up temporarily in moments of crisis. For them, authority came directly from God. Power was conditional, and leadership was accountable. But as time went on, Israel grew afraid. They started looking around at the other nations. They saw Egypt with its powerful chariots. They saw Philistia with its intimidating standing armies. They saw monarchs who ruled by force and by image. And in comparison, Israel felt small, vulnerable, even ashamed. So they went to the prophet Samuel and said something that would change their history forever. "We want a king just like all the other nations." This request wasn't really about leadership. It was about insecurity. They wanted to look strong, not be strong. God's response, delivered through Samuel, was direct and unsettling. He warned them, "A king will tax you heavily. A king will draft your sons into his wars. A king will take your daughters for his service. A king will centralize power and slowly erode the freedoms you take for granted." But Israel didn't care. They accepted the cost. Fear always accepts the cost. They were so desperate for a symbol of strength that they were willing to trade their liberty for it. And so, they got their king. His name was Saul, and Saul was everything the people expected a king to be. He was tall, physically impressive, with a commanding presence. When Saul stood among the people, he literally stood head and shoulders above them. And all of Israel looked at him and said, "Now this looks like power, but leadership that's built only on appearance will always collapse under pressure." Saul ruled with a divided heart. He obeyed God, but only when it was convenient. He feared the opinions of people more than he valued principle. He was more concerned with preserving his image than his integrity. Slowly, subtly, Saul began to replace genuine obedience with mere performance. He offered sacrifices when he was told to wait for the prophet. He spared enemies that God had commanded him to destroy, keeping the best of the loot for himself. And when confronted, he would explain away his disobedience instead of repenting from it. And so, God rejected him, not publicly, not immediately, but decisively. The crown remained on Saul's head. The power still appeared to be his, but destiny, quietly and unseen, had already moved on. God sent the prophet Samuel to the small town of Bethlehem. To the house of a man named Jesse, Samuel arrived expecting this to be a straightforward task. He thought he knew what a king looked like. He was about to have his assumptions shattered. Jesse brought forward his sons, one by one. First was Eliab, the eldest. He was strong, a warrior, a man who looked like he was born for command. Samuel saw him and thought, "Surely this is the one." But God spoke to Samuel's heart, saying, "Do not look at his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not see as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." One by one, Jesse's sons paraded before the old prophet, 7 of them, strong men, capable men, men who fit the mold of a leader, and each time, God spoke the same quiet words, "Not this one." Finally, after the 7th son had passed, a confused Samuel asked Jesse a question no one had even considered. "Are these all your sons?" Jesse paused, almost as an afterthought, and replied, "Well, there is still the youngest. He's out tending the sheep, you see." David wasn't just late to the party, he was excluded. He was never even invited. In that ancient society, Shepherding wasn't a noble calling. It was a dangerous, isolating, and menial job. It was the task assigned to the youngest, the smallest, the expendable one. David wasn't being dishonored, he was simply invisible. No one even thought to call him. When David was finally brought in from the fields, no one in that room expected anything to happen. He was just a boy, probably smelling of sheep, his hands rough from his work. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a statesman. He was a shepherd. But as soon as Samuel laid eyes on him, God spoke clearly. "This is the one. Arise and anoint him." And so, Samuel took the horn of oil and poured it over the head of a boy who would not actually rule for decades. This moment was private, it was quiet, and it was completely misunderstood by everyone who witnessed it, including, most likely, David himself. David did not receive a crown that day. He received a burden, because from that day forward, his life would become infinitely more difficult, not easier. A destiny that is revealed too early often creates danger. David was now anointed, but he was not appointed. He was chosen by God, but he was not elevated by man. And then, just as quickly as he arrived, Samuel left. No explanation. No roadmap. No timeline. Just a single, life-altering act, and then silence. What did David do? He didn't march to the capital. He didn't announce his new status. He didn't try to seize power. He went back to the fields. He returned to his sheep. The anointed king of Israel went back to being an invisible shepherd boy, carrying a secret that would shape the rest of his life, a secret he would have to learn to live within the lonely, silent wilderness. His training had just begun. Thank you for watching. If this story resonates with you, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter. See you in the next video.